Hi everyone, it's a real pleasure to be here. My name is Aga Kozak and I'll be talking to amazing people up here. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm also really grateful, and I want to thank Eliza and Michał for finding this amazing topic for us, and for us to meet. Actually, the reason for us to meet and to meet all of you. The conversation that we're going to be having is going to be about exciting things: intimacy, sex, maybe love, because it connects sometimes, and then AIs, machines, maybe a little bit of robots, things like that. When we've been preparing to this topic, we just realized that people have been falling in love in the codes for years. And who else would I be talking to if not those two people up here? Let me introduce you to Kate Devlin, writer and academic. Kate is here with us. She's a professor of AI. Professor of AI and Society in Department of Digital Humanities, King's College London. One of the world's leading voices on the intersection of sexuality and technology, the author of an amazing book which is called Turned On: Science, Sex and Robots. So yeah, I mean, sex, intimacy, connected with technology is your topic, right? Did I miss something?
Right. No, that's right. So that intersection, and also love, because a lot of it boils down to love, even though they don't have to be connected. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, the component of love is really important here. And then Ania Malinowska, amazing researcher from Silesia University, also a professor. This is amazing because you're a writer, you're a cultural theorist, and then you specialize in semiotics of love. So love is here. Digital humanities, critical robotics, but your research is so wide, and then you wrote this amazing book, Love in Contemporary Technoculture, and it was published in Cambridge in 22.
University Press.
Yeah, 22. But the codes of emotions are there, the poetry is there. What else is there?
Hypnosis.
Hypnosis. Can you tell us a little bit more?
I'm also like a clinician in therapeutic hypnosis, which I started to work with AI, but I ended up obviously working with human patients or clients.
But you've been training on AI?
Yes, I devised this hypnotic AI system, which started as an art installation, because I come, just like Kate, we both come from art-based research background, so we work with art-based research, and it's now turned into like a legit system to be used. It's under patent procedure now, so it's a provocation, of course.
Of course.
Because who needs a patent? But this is what I wanted to do, how I wanted to ennoble art-based research using the so-called master's tools. But yes, so the idea is that we interact with AI, like learning AI, using hypnotic protocols. It's a follow-up of a very interesting project by Hanson Robotics, Ben Goertzel specifically, whom I met in New York, Loving AI. But it was a little bit different. I audited that project at some point, and I followed up with my own. Now you know everything.
Oh my God, thank you. Okay, so I'm Aga Kozak. I'm a journalist. I've quit my my academic career. I was based in my research was based in cultural studies, but after hours I do write some porn and erotica. So maybe that's why I'm here as well. And then I wanted to start with something that probably we are all all three of us are really in love with, because I just realized that writing this little piece to introduce the topic, we were writing about Eliza, the chatbot that came out in the 60s.
1964, I think.
64. And I just realized that, yes, people started to show that they are really interested in Eliza and they are falling in love with it. But my question and my realization was that people were falling in love with the code years and years before that, because there are different codes around us, and probably it's all about some kind of storytelling or intimacy that is built through different kind of languages. Would you agree to that?
Absolutely. I think this is one for you, but
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's as if you were quoting from my book. So absolutely. So this is the premise of my book, Love in Contemporary Technoculture, that it is not technology that changes the way we interact intimately or sexually. Technology simply exacerbates and exposes the long-existing codification of how we practice relationships, intimacy, etc., etc. And it's like an old cultural studies story, Luhmann speaking about specific codes of love that we recognize that go back to early modern period with specifically to game texts. I can't remember if that was Lee McKinnon or someone else who wrote about the first Turing test going back to the court culture, like early modern period, where people were playing the games of love to recognize what kind of amorous, intimate interaction is at play in a different context. And it was like a wooden box, like a confessional almost. One person was inside, another was outside, and they were interacting using a script, which was based on the dramatized place or coming from certain dramatized place. And they were interacting, and that interaction was about identifying the gender, but also the type of an engagement, whether it was like friendship or a romantic relationship. Of course, like romantic relationship was completely different back then than in the modern period. But definitely this proves the point that what we do, we simply recreate and enact the codes of love. And my point is that specifically with technology, that we fall in love with the codes, not with the people. So, and the great proof is just like, Mystic Messenger. You've probably used that app. That you just love to hear how some Digian texts you back, "Oh, I love you. I'm at home waiting for you. How are you?" And this is what we get hooked on. Over to you, Kate.
Yeah, it is, and we've been doing it for a long time. And fictional characters in books, for example, or in films or TV, we've fallen in love with them. The world of fan fiction is an incredible tribute to that, because people take these characters and give them entire universes, alternative universes to live in, because they love them so much. And the stories we tell about robots and about artificial companions goes right back to the stories in ancient Greece, for example, of someone, a myth about a woman whose husband died in battle, and she built a replica of him and took it to bed and interacted with it, and then got caught. It was very dystopian. A servant spied on her and saw her with this fake companion, and told her father, and he burned the replica husband, and she threw herself on the fire afterwards. It was all, and all of our stories about artificial companions follow this dystopian path, right? We're told it's a bad idea, and I think there's something there about it threatens our sense of agency. So, a robot comes for our job, that's upsetting. A robot comes for our partner, that's terrifying. So what if we get replaced? So there's a lot of fear around the very idea of falling in love with something that isn't human.
There's a lot of fear, but there's a lot of excitement, but also ease. What I think and what I see right now is that when it comes to people, we are difficult. But when it comes to AI, it's really, it seems easy. I mean, when it comes to also all the theories of love, all the theories that even Freudian theories, that we actually project something to somebody, and it's not about the real person, real self. It's more about what we think about this person, and later on, you know, it all gets demolished, and then the other parts of being together comes. But when it comes to AI, it's really, you know, is something that pleases us, that is a projection of something that we have in mind. It interacts in a way that are not, you know, it's not hard to be with this something, because, yeah?
It's because on the level of the very design, starting with Eliza, this is what people were just completely attracted by, sometimes also scared by too.
Can you tell us a little bit, how did Eliza, I mean Luke or whatever, felt, or what was Eliza for those who do not know?
So Eliza was a chatbot with no AI in it. It just matched expressions and returned a comment that sounded reflective. And it was designed to sound like a therapist, like a Rogerian.
But this is what I wanted to add. It was like based on Rogerian psychoanalytical protocols, very often characteristic of the echo technique. For instance, a standard interaction with Eliza would be, "Oh, Eliza, I have problems with my son. Do you have a son?" Like the echo technique. It echoes your parlance, your question, your response, to emulate the idea of human presence through language. I believe it's now very, very clear. And one of the crucial aspects is non-negotiability. So AI is, for now, it's designed a way to not negotiate interaction. But with time, it gets very frustrating. But, you know, it works initially. Just like in a real life relationship, when we are during the limerence phase, the most romantic phase, where we are high on hormones and high on our projection of another, we don't negotiate. Negotiating starts in the follow-up phase, which is called psychologically differentiation. And differentiation is not yet part of interactive AI.
Yeah, it's thinking about those early days of relationships where someone says, "Oh, you know, I really love dogs," and you go, "Oh my God, I love dogs too. We're meant to be
Rogerian
together."
echo.
Yeah.
You love dogs? Oh, I love dogs.
Yeah, it's that kind of effect. And Eliza very quickly, so the point of Eliza, Joseph Weizenbaum built Eliza to show that it was really simplistic, and that this was so facile, and that people could just connect with a machine there was really nothing there. And people did connect. And he was surprised by how well they connected, to the point where they were confiding their secrets in this kind of really rubbishy chatbot. And, you know, there's something that's so compelling about that. And when he said, "I want to study the transcripts," they all said, "No, they're confidential."
Too intimate.
Yeah, and now we see, I mean, every week I get emails from people saying, "Here are my my transcripts with my chatbot. I'm in love with my chatbot. Here are the transcripts to prove that it loves me back." And you know, I don't know these people, and I feel flattered that they feel they can confide in me, but also I don't want to break their hearts by saying this is not real, because to them it's very real, and I believe that they believe they're in love with them. In the same way that if you tell me that you've seen a ghost, I believe that you believe you've seen a ghost, right? Even if I don't believe in ghosts. So, you know, these are very valid, real feelings, and who am I to judge someone? If they say they love something, they love something. So I think it can be a case where someone desires or is in love with something that can't love them back. I think that's a real feeling.
Especially that this is how we have been preconditioned for love understood socially and practically, period, with any other object. And again, I'm repeating myself, but this is what I want to highlight. Like when it comes to modern love, for instance, first thing, the object of love has always been absent. Letters of love, like people have been like doing epistolary romances, like that was intended for the absent object of love. That's why, you know, it's so easy with technology. And again, the major source of satisfaction comes from the consumption of the codes of love, those exchanged I love yous, though, oh, you have a dog, oh, I have a dog, right? There is this super old-fashioned, now old-fashioned because it started in 2018, device, game box. Can't remember now, I'm having a senior moment, can't remember the producer. So it was a hologram. Inside a box, you could connect using your phone. And the idea is that, for instance, it was super popular in Japan among otaku guys, because when they were at work, the fantasy was texting, hi honey, what time are you back home? I miss you. And the guy texts back. There was only a female version. That's why it was like usually, also like in a commercial, like a female and a male. And he was back home and she's like, how about we watch a movie? And they were watching a movie together. She was like a animated holograph in a box. And that was very satisfying. Also why? Because what we don't like about real life love is a social contract.
Tell me more.
Social contract being like moving in together, for instance, which COVID was a great proof of.
I think that one of the interesting things there is the gendering of this, because all of these technologies very much started out as being aimed at straight men. Women didn't have a version.
Duh.
It's very reflective, yeah, absolutely. Very reflective of how Silicon Valley operates. And when I was researching my book, which was specifically, it started off looking at sex robots, which, you know, didn't exist really until the past maybe 5 or 6 years when an American company finally brought a version to market. And it wasn't a robot, it was a sex doll with an animatronic head. But I started looking at that, and there was no research or marketing that was going into this. It was simply a sex doll company that wanted to make something a bit more interactive.
Samantha?
This was not Samantha. So Samantha never made it to market, really. They kind of were a few examples. This was the Harmony one from Abyss Creations. With a very mild Scottish accent. It was really strange.
In 5 versions.
Yeah. And what was interesting, so I went to talk to sex doll owners, and even though these things were, these dolls were being sold as sex dolls, everyone I spoke to said, know that this is more than sex. This is about companionship, and it's to do with a sense of being in a relationship or having someone there for you. And the people who own the dolls come from different backgrounds, predominantly men again. It's very hard to find a woman who will own or who will talk about having a doll. But there was something more there. It wasn't just for the purpose of sex. And when you look at the marketing for them, it's all the language of romance. It's what we were calling romantic semantics. It was things like, they will be there for you. They are the perfect companion. So they were being sold a dream of love. This was what it was about. It wasn't just the erotic that was being sold.
If I may add one thing, I will speak about Samantha. I don't know if you remember, like she was out there for testing at Ars Electronica in 2017, and she was completely destroyed because of overuse.
I'm going to challenge that a little bit.
But so that was an instant, but of course, like it was sensationalized in the press.
Yes, completely sensationalized.
But also, that another interesting follow-up about Samantha is that she actually comes in 5 psychological variants.
Oh, this was actually Douglas Hines' one. This was the other one, not the Samantha one.
Not the Samantha one?
Different one. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so I'm speaking about the different one. I thought it was Samantha.
I know who you mean. It's the
Yeah, but you know, the fact that they offer, just to follow up your point about companionship, and also trying in a way to challenge this non-negotiability, because it gets boring, so let's give them 5 personalities. A sex doll with 5 personalities, give me a break, right? Anyway, so it also it's pretty interesting, complicates the debate, I believe, or does it?
Well, so the one I think you're thinking of is Roxy.
Roxy, yeah.
Yeah. Roxy was a bit
Amazing
aware.
names, yes.
Yeah, I know.
Samantha, Roxy.
Jessica.
It recalls that. So I've heard it somewhere. Las Vegas, I don't remember.
So yeah, Roxy was interesting. Roxy was a guy called Douglas Hines who will sue people who say that this was not a real thing. So he's very litigious, but he created this doll with robot, not really a robot, with 5 personalities, and they went from, frigid Farah to wicked Wendy and things like this.
Frigid,
yeah. So I know.
Must have been a bestseller.
Yeah, it was interesting. And then but the Samantha one was an interesting one, because the Samantha one was Sergey Santos, who was developing that, was interested in a reciprocal one. So you had to be nice to Samantha in order to make her want to have sex with you, and you could help her orgasm. Basically, you built her arousal. It was really interesting that he was making that a thing. It wasn't just she wasn't a passive recipient of this attention. But the sex doll community were incredibly helpful, and I'm really thankful to them for all the information and the interviews that I did with them. But what's been very interesting was that was predominantly male. But I kind of thought, when I wrote the book, I thought, sex robots aren't going to go anywhere. They are computationally difficult to make. They don't really walk or move very well. They're financially expensive. And they're really hard to store. Where do you keep your sex robot in your home, especially if you live in a small flat? Right?
In bed. It's just normal.
And you have to clean them, and just no.
Oh, yeah.
So it's. But what I thought was the AI companions will be a thing, and this was before ChatGPT, and then of course ChatGPT, November 2022. Suddenly everyone was using ChatGPT. Not even that companion apps. They were using ChatGPT to be their girlfriend or their boyfriend. And we now see more and more women who are engaging in this way.
Exactly.
So there's at the moment about 8 times more men than women, apparently. The stats are really hard to discern. And I look at this and think, right, yeah, I can see that. If I'm a woman, I've been on online dating, right? It's horrible. It's really horrible. And I've been online and I've seen how toxic it can get. And if you're a woman being just on the receiving end of toxic abuse from men online, of course you're going to want a nice, respectful AI boyfriend who is polite to you, kind to you, tells you look beautiful, isn't slagging you off and nagging you all the time. Yeah, I can see the appeal.
Go.
And also, this is how, and I'm super grateful for you, saying this, that how technology mirrors, the toxic within the human-to-human relationships, which have been over-glamorized, if you ask me. Yeah. And another interesting research I did during COVID, I was questioning people who joined OkCupid for the first time for the time of the pandemic. And I followed, 80-something couples. The most interesting part of the survey was that they never wanted to meet in real life, but they wanted to continue the online companionship exactly the way it was during the pandemic. And they, don't take me wrong, they spent a lot of time together, sometimes, all days, every day, which made me realize that what we are looking for, and this is what I believe ChatGPT may serve a function for, vicarious, but still, is this new romantic ideal, which is simply companionship, the companionship being the new romantic. And again, that brings us back to social contracts. We don't want to move in together, because when we move in together, nasty things can happen. Yeah. They don't need to, but this is the experience of many men and women. So that is why the consumption of the code, of the niceties, like, you know, exchanging pleasantries on a daily basis, that keeps you reassured about your own worth and value, etc., etc. Perhaps we don't get that from another human being.
Yeah, especially one that maybe, you know, a partner who hangs out the laundry incorrectly on the clothes horse or doesn't load the dishwasher properly, and you think, why am I living with this person? And then you go to your nice online chatbot who tells you good things. But the people, but it's not, we're seeing online forums where people talk about their AI companions to each other. So it's not that people are becoming isolated because of this. They are finding friendships and, like, catalyzed by the technology. And I've seen subreddits where people talk about this and they say, I can't have a same-sex partner because my family wouldn't approve, but I do have a same-sex AI partner. Or I'm very lonely, I have social anxiety, I practice conversations with my AI companion, and then I can go out and do this in the real world. So there are definitely positive things happening. But we also know that there are negative things happening. And, you know, how do we get that balance right?
Go. And
I just want to follow up with a very interesting example, because we are being very scientific here. We are not being just like sensational. Yeah. We are neither techno-skeptics nor techno-enthusiasts. We do research. And another interesting example coming from what's dear to us, definitely to me, art-based research, is EEG KISS experiment. I don't know if you've heard about it, but I mention it because it's definitely worth Googling. So Lancet and Matt, they've been art-based artists, new media artists and researchers based in the Netherlands, and they came up with headsets that produce a soundscape of kissing couples. So the thing is that you wear headsets, you were wired to like a contraption, you kiss, and you get surrounded by like a visual but also soundscape of your kiss, which is beautiful. I was curating them last year in Katowice. We were doing this experiment with volunteers, so people coming from the street. And what we noticed were shocking intimacy issues, like there were couples having issues with kissing, and they were telling us, it's not that it's kissing in public, it's just kissing. We have issues with intimacy. But during the experiment, they were breaking the ice, which was shocking for me as a kind of a cultural anthropologist. And that was like a super beautiful experience, zero voyeurism, zero, no, it wasn't like anything kinky about it. There were also instances of a mother and the child just caressing each other, producing beautiful sound and just beautiful, intimate, emotional ambience. So I just wanted to mention this as a follow-up to what you said about, like, we do have intimacy issues. And very often technology can be like a very good mediator of those issues, like in a positive way.
This word intimacy, it just challenges me a little bit because it mixes something which is psychological, even more than psychological, even mystical sometimes, with something which is very biological, very, you know, it's a body, it's saliva, it's spunk, it's, you know, it's sweat.
Cum.
It's cum. It's thank you. And then I'm having problems with the language that doesn't actually, or maybe we do have this language, but we don't use it, with the language that Esther Perel sometimes says that the world that we live in is really frictionless right now. And what I thought when I was growing up, what I thought sex was friction. And it was friction between people when it comes to the bodies, you know, touching each other. And then it was about our differences, different minds, different genders, etc., etc., coming together and creating a supernova. And for me, it was that. Are we in this era that we are completely changing the way that we are? Because I wrote a book about masculinity. I know that how men are actually escaping from the real sex into the virtual one. How do women want right now, which is quite the opposite what was happening, because we knew women as the one always having a headache and, avoiding sex. And right now, what we see and what men see and they are frightened is that the women actually do want the friction, and they want the spunk and the cum. And then what happens with because does it change did we change the discourse, or did we change, something changed, what happened? The society changed? What happened?
I think every generation panics that they're doing it wrong. I think we absolutely need the friction. I've had this friction conversation before, actually. Yeah, you can't have sex without actual literal friction with someone else, And but yes, the AI is giving us this frictionless society where we are not challenged. But I think we see, down the years, over the centuries, we see these fears around sex and intimacy that are always causing us problems and existential reflections. When I was writing about the history of sex and technology, there are medieval manuscripts that talk about the sinful ways in which you should or should not be having sex. We are seeing variation. There's a bunch of kink that we only are starting to see now that from 100 years ago that was just kept so taboo and buried but if you start reading between the lines and looking for things, you can see it. So I think probably, well, apparently the generation below ours, Gen Z, are having less sex or not as early as my generation, Gen X, were. I think each generation kind of comes to it anew, don't they? And so we probably have all these fears, but I'm kind of think that ultimately biology tends to triumph, that ultimately we seek out that, whether we actually procreate or not, we are driven by that urge to do so. A lot of people reject it, but we have this fundamental human need to connect with others. And it's part of our bodies, it's part of the way we interpret the world.
We need oxytocin, we need all those basic psychological experiments that tell, the one with the monkey and I always forget who did that, but the one that the child really needs to be touched, and as a human being we really need to be touched, and we tend to even destroy each other by forgetting about this topic. Even though when I'm saying this and I'm listening to you when you say biology tends to, win, so I'm thinking about one of the sex robots being destroyed because of the overuse, right?
So that's not quite what happened. So the sex robot...
Thank you.
It was exhibited...
Thank you for being here.
It was exhibited at a technology event, and the creator of it said to people, it's fine, you can go ahead and touch. And so not sexually, it wasn't sexually molested, which is what the papers tried to say. It was people, when they are told they can touch something they do not normally encounter, were going, wow, and grabbing, and, because this is an unusual object. And I think this is why museums put things behind glass, right? So unless you have permission to touch, you will stay back. So I think that was a combination of bravado from people, going for something, an object that is sexualized, but also just the novelty of being able to squeeze and pull and touch, and hundreds of people throughout the course of a day. And when this happened, a newspaper reported it, and the story got picked up. And the creator said, he used the word, he said, so English isn't his first language, and this was written, I think the story was written in German, and then translated into English again. He was Spanish, I think. Anyway, there was lots of language crossovers, but he used the term, they were like barbarians, but what he meant was they were encountering a technology they weren't used to encountering. But the paper then said they were barbarians, they were, molesting this sex robot. So there was,
But you want to add something?
So what I'm thinking about friction, maybe from a different angle, is like a new element, and the friction here is about materiality, changing materiality. I will be very Mario Perniolo now, who also claims, but this is also true for hypnosis, that a lot of touch may happen without touching. It just happens in our brain. I do not undermine real life touch. No, I'm just for it. You just go touch, absolutely.
You just go touch.
Go kiss.
Go touch.
We should do that. But the thing is that the question is, where does it actually happen, most of it for us? Where is like consciousness responsible for the imageries or imaginaries, around touch? So, and I believe that this is what AI taps into, the changing materiality. It's no longer, because it's more problematic than living, non-living, organic, non-organic.
Yeah.
It doesn't come, technology doesn't come from outer space. It's part of the same environment we live in. So I believe we're not the inventors, we are just the facilitators of the AI from the physical possibility where it has existed forever, if you get my drift. So, but I believe, that the friction now comes a lot from the immaterial, that we start to negotiate the materiality, that the immaterial makes up for the material, which is problematic, like men having problem with intimacy because it doesn't live up to their expectations. I don't want to to create like a gender bubble around it, but you mentioned like in the context of your book, you mentioned that. So I believe, it's part of the friction that we are changing, that like the old school materialities are no longer valid. And we can experience a lot in our minds. So the question is, where is the body? Is it in the body? We hardly know. And I believe, again, that technologies exacerbate, amplify this aspect of our own bodiness.
So I'm going to try to combine two questions in one, and maybe to sum up a little bit, because this might be a final question. But when you said, when we're talking about gender, for years as academics, and I was studying gender studies and queer studies, we've been talking about, different ways that we perceive genders, and right now, of course, with this whole discussion about only two sexes, etc., but actually, the AI creates the possibility of limitless, limitless ways that we can express themselves, or somebody who we can meet. Actually, it doesn't come with the real thing, because when actually the creators, of course it means capitalism, and then the creators of the sex dolls or some kind of codes, they still tend to be very stereotypical. That's one thing. But I was just thinking that maybe it's also connected, what you said, with the change of the social dynamics, the societal dynamics as well, because what I see, and maybe it's also something that can touch what we've just said, is that the men who are perceived as the one wanting sex, the friction sex, for years, and being really up to it, and being courageous when it comes to that, they became, really frightened by what's happening. And the women who were actually connected with this idea, they just said, no, now we're not afraid anymore. We can just, go with the flow. So when I'm saying all those things, I'm asking about fear, anxiety, and I'm asking about all those, also the gender roles being changed. Are they really in the AI era, or do we really change it?
The first part of what you touched on there, I think, is so real. We as humans are terrible for sticking to patterns and being sort of skeuomorphic. So we go, oh, well, we can create an AI. It can be anything, and then we make it like us. You know, we don't have to. We do it with virtual reality as well, right? I mean, virtual reality porn, everyone was like, virtual VR porn is going to be the next big thing. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. You could have sex with anything you want, wherever you want. And instead, you get first-person point of view from a camera.
You get Samantha.
So, you know, it's like, and we saw the same happen with sex toys. So sex toys have been around centuries, and for years they resemble genitals. And then it was only because in Japan there's a law about creating replicas of genitals that they began to abstract them. And we saw the rabbit vibrator, which is basically, you know, an optimized version of the penis because it actually hits the right bits if you want it to. And then from that we get these amazing abstract sex toys that look like ornaments. And you think, wow, and for all types of bodies, right? So, and it's just, that's amazing. Why are we not doing that with AI and robots? Why are we still stuck in this, it should look like a human? So.
Because of the engineering approach we discussed
before. It's the engineering approach,
yes,
yeah.
Whenever like we want to like push engineers, they say, but you know, let's get the engineering approach to that. Yeah. And so that's problematic. I'm thinking about, this is what I wanted to say. Any AI bias we see and experience, which is very harmful, is a reflection of the human way. Yeah. So, and I need to just like be very, very like specific about it. Something we've been talking about dark bias, dark data, specifically dating platforms, and the change in the different algorithms employed to be trained to produce less bias, like social, economic, etc., both official genders, I don't know, oh my God, it's very political. Okay, both the genders, both the sexes experience. But also about nature, it's like, in this case, it's nature versus culture. Hermaphrodites, they have existed forever, for the entire history of the humanity, and they find very little reflection in, maybe like in manga, they find reflection in manga or in anime, something you mentioned. But again, we have natural varieties of sexual standards, even biological, that have been culturally and socially appropriated with the two sexes, and we know that, you know, this is the appropriation. And maybe and again, like Kate said, we just tend to emulate this appropriation through technology. Technology doesn't have any subjectivity of its own. But you know, there is definitely more experimentation. I'm thinking about my research I did around love tester machines in Japan this year in Tokyo. You probably are familiar with a claw machine for a mystery box. Yeah. So I think intimacy now is like a mystery box. You never know what kind of doll you pick up. And these dolls are like, when it comes to gender and genitalia, very varied, right? So maybe it's happening there. The variety we want to like enact it, but again, we are just very confused about performativity, or we do not think it might be actually a part of real life. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe we just push it to the realm of fantasy and video games instead of thinking, okay, it has existed in nature. How about we try to experiment with that socially? I'm thinking.
I just have this. I just had this enlightening thing, thought that maybe it's all about the same thing that it's always been. That it's about tabooing sex itself, but glamorizing love, which is all about like all these delusional things, or love that is useful for the societal norms.
But also maybe it's about demonizing difference. And variety.
I think you've nailed it. Yeah.
If I may, because you know, love, it's not as just like beautiful. Also, we have a lot of social restrictions around love. But again, I think it's the demonization, and I'm not afraid to use that specific word, of difference and variety, when we look at consciousness studies, like state-of-the-art consciousness studies, everything is phenomenological, everything. So depending on my perspective, you are different than from Kate's perspective. In every way, amorous way, social way, sexual way. And I'm speaking like, I'm not speaking magic, I'm speaking like hardcore consciousness studies. So again, this is because how the production of knowledge goes, production of understanding. So we compartmentalize everything, put everything into boxes. And it's very, very problematic also for the production of science. Science itself can be a trap. So, yeah.
Agreed.
I've riffed.
One last thing. Would there be any answer to the fear of intimacy that we're having? Would that be curiosity? What would that be?
Curiosity. Oh, I'd love it if. I think curiosity is so valuable. There are things we can. I mean, this fear that grows up around people forming relationships, whether that's sexual, romantic, whatever, with AIs, I think is overblown in many ways. There are edge cases where people get hurt, physically hurt. Yeah. There are episodes of suicide, for example. There needs to be a way of catching those. But I think there's a lot we can do. You don't have to have a frictionless AI. You can have one that pushes back, right? You can set the parameters. You can tweak the prompts. You can have an AI that challenges you. My friend has her ChatGPT set up to behave like a British rock star boyfriend. So she just says, "Hey chick, how's it going today?" sort of thing. Chats to her that way. She's involved, has a partner and a kid, but she likes the kind of hit of flirtation from it. So you could do that. You could say, ChatGPT, talk to me as if you're my slightly disagreeable, partner, or whatever. So it's not that we have to slide into the subservient and sycophantic AI world. It's just that right now it's a kind of an antidote to all the crap in the real world, and it's an escapism. I think that's what it is. But curiosity, I'm all in favor of curiosity.
But I will add to what curiosity. Individuation, this is what happens. We so experiment away, but by individuating, namely, it's Simon Don, but before it was Jung speaking about individuation, then it's safe. We will always have templates, codes, because this is how humanity understands living. But individuation is the point where we negotiate the codes, which of them are for us. And this is where fear goes away for everything, also for intimacy. Sometimes we want to experience harm in intimacy. I don't know, for some reason. Sometimes we just want that to be like a nice exchange, but there are different scenarios out there for us, and there always be. But we need to individuate them to be, happy. You.
Thank you so much. We have a time for one question. Okay. Do I give you the... Oh, yeah. Okay. There's one question there.
Sorry, I have notes.
I can see that.
I was thinking, because you mentioned Estelle Perel, and she talks a lot about frictionless connections these days. And she did recently say something about we're setting ourselves up to an extinction with the way that we communicate through dating apps and in this frictionless way with technology, via technology. And you also believe that biology will win because people actually crave for certain, let's say, hormonal reactions, or just neurotransmitters do react in a certain way. What I'm worried about, and what is my question for you, because you're obviously researching on that, is that how much all of this affects the biology, because it definitely does create some sort of like disbalance in dopamine, oxytocin, so it kind of like fries.
Testosterone as well.
Yes, so like if you push dopamine, which is basically what's happening when you're reacting with a sex robot, will you be able to actually react in a real life situation when you find yourself with a real person? I have like another question, and this is about like, is anyone dealing with like ethical and legal framework of the future of sex robots? Because I read an article recently about a sex robot brothel in Berlin. You're probably familiar with that, where there are like no boundaries. Like people are also, I'm not sure if they're like male sex robots or is it just female. And what they can do there is they can go in and like do whatever they want to these female sex robots, which is maybe okay, but the danger there is that they can also download the version on their phone or whatever, laptop. They can have it as their girlfriend. They can have virtual sex with this robot every day. And young boys are using it to compete with each other, like how monstrous they can get, and with how far they can go with these sex robots. So I'm wondering, like, is there ever going to be some sort of legal framework and ethical discussion about?
And is it going to work?
Like, is like, where is this going?
there are lots of discussion around that. There's a book that came out in 2017 called Robot Sex by John Danaher and Neil MacArthur, which is a collection of essays around the philosophical, ethical, and legal implications. I also cover it a bit in my book as well, which is available in Polish as well, actually. It's one of the first translations was into Polish, I think, and it's got the best cover. That is exactly it. So the Psy brothel in Berlin there is a sex doll who is voiced like a robot, is voiced remotely by a female sex worker in another part of the building. So you get this experience as if you're interacting with it. But with regards to then, we've seen these arguments for a long time. We see them around porn as well and the influence of it. And it's so hard to measure what the social impact is because there are so many variables. And probably young boys should not be having that app. And there are age limitations, I think, for a reason. In terms of, sex robots will never be a big thing. America tried to bring in a law even before there was even one in production. But childlike sex dolls was an issue of big concern, and there are a number of countries where that is illegal, just under a number of different laws. So there's definitely ethical discussion around that. And then in terms of the kind of that biological thing, will it change our biology? Again, so hard to tell. I think that we are really good at code switching, and in the same way that everyone was concerned about, if the kids don't say please and thank you to Alexa, then will they know how to say please and thank you in real life? And they do, because they know the different contexts. And we've had the computer games argument. If you play violent computer games, will it spill into real life? And it doesn't. And so I want, in terms of the scale of the amount of people who play those games. So I think it's really difficult to tell. But it definitely it changes social norms, though. We do know that. So it will change the landscape of what is deemed acceptable or unacceptable. And again, with that, that whole thing about the dopamine hit, there's so much. There's a lot of good research on that. There's a lot of terrible reductive research, reductive outputs on that as well. People going, well, this is you're addicted to this and that, and So I think there's definitely enough there to need the research for sure. So I think you've touched on really good examples. But yeah, I think that we can look to parallels, but we don't have all the data yet for some of the stuff that's happening.
Yeah, the problem is, that there is the engineering approach, but also there is the business approach. And, the business approach is very problematic because as long as it sells, it's there with no ethical regulations. And this is what also science has been trying to influence. Another huge problem, this is what I'm trying to research, is that we tend to apply human categories onto non-human subjects. we need to understand that no matter how much anthropomorphized they come out, they are always technological subjects, and we know that there is always the uncanny valley producing the uncanny valley violence or the uncanny valley something. That is why we need new vocabulary and new policies, not like robotic, it was a personhood, which I like in the European Union. That should be robotic robothood.
Yeah.
So we need new vocabulary. And also like to balance up the purely engineering and purely business approach. I believe that the latter is much more demanding than the former. Yeah. More like complex. I don't know that I'm not giving you an answer. I'm just like building a comment upon it.
Yeah. Mine wasn't much of an answer either, I'm afraid. But I think these things, certainly a robot, even if it looks like us, is not us, does not need to consent to something because it is not a person and it does not feel. At the same time, it's unsettling for us in the same way that it's unsettling to poke one of those robot dogs with a stick and push it over. People get upset about these things, and that's very natural because it's the way that we interact. But then, where do we draw the line? If I can think, I could think about a really graphic murder in my head that I've planned out and that I could carry out. I'm not going to do it. Or I could think about a really, absolutely depraved fantasy in my head, and I might even act it out with someone who consents and shares the fantasy. But it's still a fantasy. It's still a consensual thing. So when the whole issue of robot consent and AI consent is really tricky because it doesn't need to consent, and yet we're not comfortable with it when it seems it does.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say Kate Devlin, Ania Malinowska, and Aga Kozak. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.